Hola, this is Padre Tim Mateo, and you're watching Tim's Time. You'll recall I started a discussion about siesta last week wearing this sombrero. I'll just hold it this week. We want to move from siesta to fiesta, the second element of this wonderful tradition-laden brim. But before we do, one final thought on siesta. This is about that time of year as spring starts to hit and the school year starts to wind down when pastors all over the country will attempt to give their volunteers some rest time or siesta time. And they'll be met with some opposition. And usually it takes a lot of different forms, but occasionally what I hear most is I'll hear this phrase. Satan doesn't rest or take time off, and neither should the church. And I usually smile, and then I respond. So I'm liable to anger you as we start this week together, but lean in real close and let me tell you something. I don't follow Satan, and I don't set my agenda based upon his schedule. My Heavenly Father and my Lord both modeled rest, and what's more, they command me to have siesta, to rest. And I think it's because God knows that when we take time away and we unplug, we reflect and renew and refresh and reevaluate and revision and recapture and all those other words that we all want to experience so that we can be refreshed as we face into another year. So I don't know whether you're going to need to split your days or how you're going to find that time of siesta or rest, but I hope that you do, or that you will. I challenge you to make a way. And then just a thought on fiesta, party, and that's what this hat usually is associated with, because those of us who eat a lot of Mexican, we know the uncomfortable feeling of having this slipped upon our head at our birthday parties at a Mexican restaurant where the waitresses and waiters all gather around and sing in Spanish and wish us a happy birthday. It's the concept of fiesta. You know, the Ten Commandments are given twice in the Old Testament. In Exodus, that's the more famous version of them, but they were given again. They were discovered in Deuteronomy in the first few chapters where they're restated. And in both statings of the commandment, there's the several verses that go together that God expounds and explains why Sabbath is so important. In the Exodus version, he approaches it more from the resting. God, your Heavenly Father rested when he created, and you need to siesta. In the Deuteronomy, you almost get this idea that there's a play atmosphere. In fact, rather than really talking about just the creation model, Moses in the second accounting in Deuteronomy says, you've been, for 400 years, you've been slaves. Parenthesis, you haven't had a day off in 400 years. Take a day off. Spend it with your family. Spend it with your friends. Spend it in recreation. There's another one of those words. Recreation. And so I think Eugene Peterson was the first one to ever speak this into my heart years and years ago. To properly do Sabbath, it has to be more than a day off, but it is also a day off. There has to be a prayer or a praying and reflecting element, but there also has to be a playing and a recreating element. And so, you know the old saying, I think it originated with God, even though it's been changed through the years, all work and no play makes Jack. Oh, before we get back to Jack, if I had $1,000 for every time I put my arm around the shoulders of a young man who was working too hard and said, you need to cut back on the amount of hours you work. Those kids are going to be grown. Your life's going to be gone. You need to give more priority to your worship, to your Heavenly Father, and to your family. Our building would be paid off, and our budget needs would be moot and minute. So all work and no play makes Jack an ineffective father, a burnout Christian, unfulfilled husband. And if the spiral doesn't reverse itself, fatigued. And so maybe that's you. Maybe I'm only speaking to 2% of you who listen and watch every week. And the rest of you, you're sailing through life and everything's going wonderful and you're praying at 4:32 and your inward life is what it needs to be. And I'm only speaking to the 2% of you who are aching of soul for a new start and a refreshing. Then let me encourage you to do it God's way and to siesta, as well as do it God's way and fiesta. Start today. Start this week. Happy Sabbath. Have a great week.